Hey Diana, did you know most law firms are pushing square wheels?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my number one, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's going on?
Not much. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing good. This is my last day in the office before I go to Europe and go spend an insane amount of money in a different country. So I hope the exchange rate is good.
So we're very proud of that.
I know. I'm not proud of all the money I'm having spent.
Having or getting?
Oh my goodness. So, anyway, I'm taking the entire family, including a 1-year-old child, across Europe. So
That's a getting to, not a having to.
yeah, okay.
It's all about perspective, Mark.
It's kind of a daunting thing. It's kind of gotten me a little kerfuffle, but that's okay. Anyway, so I'm going to last week, as a matter of fact, or at least the last podcast that dropped, we were talking about the pressure test and the owner going away on vacation and testing how well the firm functions without them. So here is our pressure test. We're going to get a 2-week pressure test to make sure everything runs just fine without me. And quite frankly, I'm very confident things will probably run better without me because I won't be here mucking things up. So
Well, it's up that you do. So I don't know which one that one was that dropped last week, but is this the one where I got you to admit that you wouldn't be replying to emails, or is that the one that's going to drop soon?
no, that was the one. Yeah.
Yes. So you are going to commit to these things, or are you just still tentatively considering?
I'm just considering it.
Okay. So we may still beefy up the promockability.
We may.
But today we are leading up to 100. So very excited about this. This was my marketing idea to be able to lead up to 100. And so last 97, we revisited our most listened to episode. That was your listener voted. And then today, 98, we are revisiting Mark's favorite episode. And I actually thought about this one because I got this outline late yesterday. I wondered which one it would be. And I don't know why I didn't guess that it would be the Flywheel.
Which one did you guess?
I didn't know. I really didn't. Maybe 40X was one of my thoughts, maybe the EOS stuff, but I didn't have Flywheel. So why did you choose Flywheel, Mark?
So I think flywheel is just a very simplistic way of describing the way a business operates. So we talked about this on episode 6. Um, but I read, Jim Collins, the little short book that sells for the price of a big book. What do they call them again?
A monograph.
A monograph. Okay. It's a
Show and tell for those that
It's
are.
a show and tell. That thing costs the same as a regular 300-page book, but it's much smaller. So I assume it was easier to write. Way to make a profit, Jim Collins.
No, actually, really did. It was $14.99 on the ISBN.
I know. Anyway, point being, I read the Flywheel, and then one of my Atticus coaches, Glenn Gutek, was giving a presentation. And he came up and he said, every business has to answer the same 5 questions. What's your vision? Who are you going to serve? How are you going to capture those people? How are you going to serve those people? And how are you going to maintain that relationship? And I listened to that and it just struck me like he just laid out the perfect flywheel. And I've always thought that was just a great 5 questions that every business has to answer. And it basically forms the flywheel of how I think a service business, particularly a law firm, has to operate. So it's always been my favorite thing because you always go back to those 5 questions. And that's going to be the basis of kind of what we're going to cover again today. So we covered this in episode 6, but I have a few more, I would say, updated spins on it. after 2 years of thinking about it. Can't believe we've been doing this for 2 years.
I can.
Yes, I'm sure you can.
And we also revisited the flywheel in episode 68 when you talked about the marketing flywheel specifically, because you have a thesis that basically there's the big flywheel for the business, then each, not department, but almost essentially each department has its own flywheel.
Right. You can, like I said, do the big flywheel for the firm. You can have sub flywheels for each individual component within the firm, each department within the firm.
So I guess before we start on your new spin on things, we should probably introduce Colin's take on what a flywheel actually is.
Okay. Well, lay it out for me. What does Colin say?
Well, so from the monograph, and I'm just going to quote Collins because really he says it best. Each term builds upon previous work as you make a series of good decisions, supremely well executed, that compound upon another. I just love that. Supremely well executed just speaks so much to my high C. It's my love language. But so basically you're taking each thing, and I just think about almost like Sisyphus, but with a much better outcome. Sisyphus is the Greek god who was condemned to push the rock up the hill forever and ever, and then he gets to the top, and then he has to take the rock comes back.
Oh, and never really gets to the top.
Yeah, well, he never crests over the other side. He just gets really close. So the flywheel, though, in theory, when supremely well executed, to use Collins' words, you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing, taking consistent measures over and over again. And at some point, the flywheel takes off on its own, and you have the execution of your vision, essentially. But it comes from a car. Is that correct?
That's right. So, well, I mean, it could come from other things. So people don't know this, but I assume modern cars have the same thing. I know, cars back in the day when we used to actually have carburetors, they have flywheels in the engine. A motor doesn't just stop and start. It has to build up momentum. It also has to wind down. So there's flywheels built into the motor of a car. So when you accelerate, the flywheel ramps up. And you notice if you take your foot off the accelerator, you don't stop immediately. You start to slow down gently. That's the flywheel working. Because if you just were herky-jerky about it, you would snap the crankshafts in the engine in a heartbeat. So that's the point of having the flywheel within the engine. It helps momentum gain, and it also slows down the momentum when you take off the gas. So it's not so immediate. That's mechanically what a flywheel is. And I think you can basically draw the analogy of how we're using it here. You want steady progress that builds momentum. But the reverse effect is also there. Is like when you take your foot off the gas, you slow down gradually. You don't stop all at once.
All right, Mark. So any parting thoughts before we go on? Great.
Well, I would just say that I think the problem is most law firms don't think of their business as a big flywheel. They just think of it as a bunch of disconnected things that they kind of bolt together and build this business out of. But I think if you think about it correctly and think about things as building on top of each system, building on top of each system, building momentum, I think the buzzword that businesses use is synergy. Building synergy with the firm, which I think is kind of a foo-foo word. But I think when you apply in the context of this is what a flywheel does, I think it starts to make some sense. So with that, when we get back, we're going to go over 5 questions.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
All right, we're back. Okay, so the problem as I see it is most firms Most lawyers don't actually know their flywheel. They've never thought about what their flywheel actually looks like. And the quote from Collins that I wrote down here is, no matter how dramatic the end result, a good to great transformation, and that's Collins's buzzword, good to great. Good to great transformations never happen in one fell swoop. They happen with a series of good decisions over time. And that's hence flywheel. You're building up your momentum. So I think the problem is most firms think they have a growth strategy, and what they really have are like random acts in marketing. They do some ads, they do some SEO, podcasts, vendors. Ooh, podcasts, that was us. We do some random. See, we don't do random podcasts. We do a podcast every single week.
Yeah.
Yes, I know you're yaying that. I know some friends of mine out there who have podcasts, and they'll drop a couple of podcasts and then they don't do anything for a month or two. Then they'll drop a few more, and then they'll wait 3 months. And like, what kind of momentum are you gaining there? I don't understand what they're even trying to accomplish.
Other people take summer breaks.
Yeah, we don't do that. No,
No. Why would we?
we have not missed a single week in moving on almost 100 episodes. 100 episodes every week.
You're really telling my face on this, up on the video portion.
Yeah, she's sponging our regards.
But
Yeah, I will say I've done a couple of solo podcasts when you were out.
you did.
I did 2.
Oh, a couple. Okay.
I did a couple. There are a couple of solos.
You did one with Melanie.
Okay, that was 3. So that was 3 times you were out.
What were the other 2 about?
The other 2, I did an offering on my marketing template, and then
Podcast of 15 minutes.
well, whatever. 15 minutes is 15 minutes.
Okay.
It counts.
I'm mad at Mark in case you listeners haven't
She's
figured
mad that I missed her meeting this morning, which I told her had a conflict. I wasn't going to.
That is not the fly. Well, discouraging, but at any point. So yes, they do random acts of marketing.
And then they wonder why they don't have any momentum. And the problem is momentum comes from repeatable systems that are, again, repeated and compound over time. I will give the example, our television campaign. We're running, TV campaign almost, right at a year right now. And it's really kind of has been slow. It hasn't really worked all that well, but we're hanging in there. We're not giving up on it. And it's slowly gaining momentum. Painfully slow, I will add.
Expensively.
Extensively slow, I might add.
I might add from the financials.
Yes, as the woman who looks at the spreadsheets. But we're sticking with it. We're not going to give up on it.
Which is actually a lesson later on in the outline. So Mark, why don't we go ahead and kick it off? Because most flywheels, or I guess nearly every flywheel, has 5 to 6 components. So you have 6 components for your flywheel today.
So again, the flywheel is not your strategy. It's what happens when your strategy compounds. So I like to think about it into Glenn Gutek's. I give him all credit in the world, and I'm sure he stole it from somebody else, but his 5 questions. So his first question was, what is your vision? So you can't build momentum without direction. Vision is your direction. What are you trying to build? Without a vision, your marketing, it gets random. Your hiring gets inconsistent. Your case selection gets sloppy. But, once you put a vision in place, you have a clear vision, which gives you consistency, which then gives you momentum. I think that's the whole point of the question, what is your vision? When you can clarify what your vision is, it's easy to start getting momentum. So when I used to be the jack of all trades, I would take whatever walked in the door that could write me a check. I'd handle a probate matter and handle a criminal matter, and I'd handle a random bankruptcy matter when no one paid bills because I needed to pay bills. But it distracted me. It kept me from building the momentum that I wanted to build. It was, in that case, it was all about what kind of marketing I was doing and what kind of case selection I was doing. It's called threshold law. You take anything that walks over the threshold that had cash.
And that's not a vision.
That's not a vision. That is just random acts of desperation is what that was.
Well, and a revenue target, I would posit, is also not a vision. A vision is almost like a decision filter. Like it allows you to say yes to these things and no to other things if for example, the marketing strategy, does it fit within your 5-year vision? Which we talk a lot about vision here because it's such a big part of EOS and traction and all the work that we do there. It's actually the starting point. We spent so much time coming up with that vision. So if it doesn't fit in that vision, then it's typically a no or a we're going to hold off on that. You keep mentioning compounding, which it's a great word, but I think you can only get to that C word when you have the other C word, which is consistency, which of course is a high C. I love. You have to be consistent about the things that you're doing, the decisions that you're making, where you're spending your money, the clients you take. All of that has to be consistent, and it all has to be in the same vein of whether or not it's going to accomplish your vision.
So the key thing you said there is say no, which is a great segue into the next question, which is who will you serve? Um, if everybody is your client, nobody is your client. So the question becomes, who are you uniquely built to serve? Who can you serve in an extraordinary way, in a superior way? Because we want to do superior work, because superior work leads to superior results, superior outcomes, superior clients, superior profits. And my problem when I was doing threshold law, like I was just talking about, is I couldn't say no. I couldn't say no to people who would walk in the door and would actually have cash to pay me because at that point, used to be paid bills. The first time I actually ever said no was I was on a regular list from Judge Hannah Chow, lovely judge that I knew many, many years ago. She was in County Court 5 in Harris County, Texas. Love her. She would regularly appoint lawyers to what they call the 2-week docket. So you would come in and serve as the de facto public defender on a day rate to handle the jail docket for her. And you would get paid. And lawyers who did criminal law loved that stuff. It was like, it was steady work. And they got your experience, I'm sure. You got a lot of experience doing it. And I remember the first time that it clearly struck me that my destiny would be at that point in life would be to be a personal injury lawyer, do contingency fee work. I finally had to say no. They called me up like, hey, Mark, we want you coming in next week for the next 2 weeks. And I said no. I turned down good money. That was good money back then. And I turned it down. I said no because I had decided, I'd made the decision of who I wanted to serve. And at that time, I said, I only want to serve my personal injury clients on a contingency fee basis. I've started, like, I'm going to turn down the cash money because good money, but it takes away your attention from what you're really trying to build. So the point being is, I think, and this goes back to, I know we've talked about this a lot, niches make riches. Ultimately, when I did specialize, I started making more and more and more money. But I had to get over that fear of turning down business because it really was a fear. I was afraid that if I turned the business down, it would go away forever and I would never be able to, recoup the revenue that I had turned away. So anyway, I think that's really what the concept of who you will serve is all about. Is who you serve, does it serve your vision? Does it serve your greener flywheel?
Yeah, and I think, we talk a lot about, Cassie Lewis's idea of top 50 cases. We talk about having an avatar. We talk, according to Claude, who analyzed our podcast, we talk a lot about marketing on this particular podcast. But I think it goes more, or it goes beyond having like an avatar of of who you want to serve and understanding who your ideal client is in terms of fit. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you're a settlement shop, but your client wants litigation, or by the time they get to us, it's usually the other way around. We want to be more aggressive with our litigation, but because of the administrative appeals process, it takes a lengthier time than most PI cases, I would argue. Then our clients are weary and just want to settle. Then just make sure you're aligned on the outcome, that the desired outcome. Because I think clients that are aligned in terms of a preferred outcome, they're the ones that are going to leave good reviews. They're going to refer you cases. So it's beyond having the avatar, I think, because finding clients that, just because they have the right, fit your take criteria, sometimes the opportunity cost of taking those clients might be invisible, which is why we don't really count it.
So really the principle behind the flywheel principle here, if you combine the first question, what is your vision, with your second question, who will you serve? And you get those two questions right. What happens is you get better targeting, you get better messaging, you end up with better cases, which means you have better outcomes. It all builds on each other. So those first two questions, getting those two questions right, starts to build on each other.
Which is the flywheel. So then
Which is
your third question, Mark, which is
the third question: how in the hell is your ideal client going to find you? Okay, which kind of goes back to what we just said: better targeting, better messaging, better outcomes. How are they going to find you? This is the marketing. This is really the marketing question: is how is your ideal client going to find you? How are you going to get better leads into your lead funnel? So some examples. All right, this podcast. We do this podcast specifically, as a marketing device. This is how we market to our services to other lawyers to get referrals from other lawyers. We have published books on the topic. This is how we promote ourselves as an authority on the subject, because we've written books on the subject of disability. Look at my YouTube channel. There's hundreds, if not over 1,000 videos now. Have we hit 1,000 videos on the YouTube channel? Not yet, but we have not. We're getting close. We have a ton of videos. We do PR work. We do SEO work. We try to build our referral relationships. All of these things are things that we do very consistently over long periods of time, because we're trying to answer that question: how will our ideal client find us? Are they going to find us directly, or are they going to find us through a third party referring? For us, it's lawyers. Lawyers are great referral sources for us. Everybody out there listening, please refer to case. Thank you. That's the third question in the flywheel.
And we've talked a lot about this because the biggest update, really, since we originally talked about this with episode 6, and then I guess was it 68, is how AI is changing how our clients find us. And so that's really that whole AEO, GEO, all of that, that work that we did.
Yeah. So, AI itself is not a flywheel. It is simply a tool that you can use to accelerate your flywheel. But it's great at helping you create content, do SEO research, your messaging, your educational content. There are tools out there AI tools that help you optimize your marketing message, optimize your website to be more findable. Probably a lot of other things that I'm not thinking of. But
Well, especially in terms of referrals, just taking this podcast as one example, we will record this hopefully 40-minute podcast if I can keep Mark succinct today.
never.
And then we'll have reels that will go on to LinkedIn to hopefully keep this top of mind for you guys for your referrals. They'll also go onto our YouTube page for different little shorts. And so not just with AI, but also just the tools in general increasing allow us to do one thing and then create different methods of content or different content.
This podcast is repurposed in like 6 different ways.
Exactly. And so the flywheel portion of that is that it's not that we're just doing more, it's that we're reducing the friction between each of different forms.
Exactly. Which then leads in to question number 4. All right, so you marketed the hell out of it. Why are they going to hire you? Just because they come to your front door, how you get them over the finish line, how you get them to sign on the dotted line. Marketing gets the call, but the intake department gets the client. So the question again is, why should they hire you? So we train our intake department on this a lot. The theory is trust plus intake plus authority equals assigned client. So how can you create trust? How can you create authority? Reviews. We very much focus on reviews, particularly internet reviews, because that's what people look at. We have over 1,000 Google reviews just in our Houston office. That didn't happen by accident. I mean, this is something that we have been working on for years and years, and we consistently do it every week, week after week. Every month we look at this stuff. It just didn't happen. But, now we have over 1,000 reviews, and I don't think anybody, maybe one person out there is sort of close to us, but nobody else is even in the same universe as we are when it comes to reviews. And that's a massive trust signal. Why are they going to hire you? Because I can point to that. My people, my intake team can point to that. They see it before they even come here. They know our reviews, what our reviews are, even before they pick up the phone and call. Then you have your books. Our books are posted on our website. Half of our clients, have visited our website before they come and hire us. So they see that. It's an authority signal that we put out there. I'm actually double board certified. I'm not sure how much people really understand what that means. I know lawyers understand what that means, and it certainly helps with lawyer referrals. I guess it means something to the average consumer. I'm not.
I think so because,
I don't know. We never asked. We should ask this question.
we should, but I think that they're familiar with it because, I mean, think about doctors. You want a board certified surgeon or, board certified gastro doctor.
I know in the medical field, board certification is extremely common. I read some stat like over 90% of doctors are board certified in something. Lawyers are the exact opposite. I've heard the stat that maybe 5 or 6% of lawyers are board certified. It's just not a big a thing in our industry.
But you could
Don't
mean
I?
to the purchaser.
I think and I think the biggest part is the performance. Why are they going to hire you? It's the performance of your intake process. Is it quick? Is it fast? Is it informative? Is informative a word? Okay, what was I'm trying to say? Informative. Thank you. Okay, I was not an English major.
Nor was I.
I can just make up words on the spot. So
Clearly.
yeah. And hey, try being friendly. Try and instill friendliness in your intake process because people, want people that are nice to them. They want people that are gruff. I just called my dentist, and it's not like I want to see my dentist, but I just called the dentist, and I didn't get through to anybody, so I got shoved off to an answering service. Like name, Mark, date of birth, blah blah blah. Why are you calling? What's your number? Can you say that again? I hear you first time. Okay, geez. I mean, who hired this guy? I don't know. Not a good system. I would change dentists except for I'm committed to these people.
Yeah.
I am my doctor's retirement. Now I will say I love my dentist. He's a doctor. I will say I love my dentist. So, hey doc, love you. Don't screw this up. But his answering service kind of not there.
No, I think compassion for sure bridges that trust gap because, especially in our industry or any of our industries, they're calling because they have a need. And usually they're not very proactive unless you're estate planning, those types of things. And so responsiveness and consistency, again, we'll come back to that consistency word. Following up when you say that you're going to follow up makes them or bridges that trust gap between you and
Right.
them.
It's a critical piece in the flywheel. It doesn't matter how good you answer the first 2 questions or the first 3 questions, but when you come to how they hire you, if they don't trust you, the moment they're not going to hire you. That's the and that's the thing about the flywheel. If any piece of your flywheel is broken, none of it works. It all falls apart because it all depends on each other. So all right, so they hire you. You got over the hurdle. How or why would they hire you? Next, how are you going to deliver value? How are you going to do what you promise to do? How are you going to solve their problem? I mean, that's what people hire lawyers to do. They hire us to solve their problems. And bad delivery of service kills the momentum of flywheel. Just kills it. So what you really want to do is you want to focus on how do you create a remarkable experience for the client. It's not enough that you do great legal work because most people don't they don't know how to judge great legal work. They don't know what you're doing. They don't know how to value what you're doing. What they remember is how you made them feel. How did you make them feel throughout the process? Did you communicate with them? Was the outcome, was it relatively predictable, about what you told them at the beginning versus what they received in the end? I mean, did they understand the process along the way? Did it happen the way you explained it to them? Was it predictable in their mind? Because that gives them a level of comfort and a level of satisfaction that he told me and he delivered on what he told me.
Yeah. And so we talk a lot about the experience on this podcast, with unreasonable hospitality, that episode, and a few others. We talk about how we can create, as even lawyers, how we can make this about the experience because the experience, I mean, sure, you can get a great outcome for a client, but what you're wanting also in this flywheel is the referral, is the 5-star review, the great legal work. That's just almost expected. So to go above and beyond now, because what you're wanting in that flywheel is that referral, is that 5-star review. So to get there, you're living the experience. And we talk a lot about how we can do that on this podcast.
Yeah. Better outcomes equal better reviews equal better reputation. All part of the flywheel. And if you screw this up anywhere along the line, again, you've broken the flywheel. So the last question is, how would you maintain the relationship once the representation is over? A case ending shouldn't mean that the relationship ends. The relationship should continue. And this is where a lot of firms lose momentum. This is where I have lost tremendous amounts of momentum over my career. I probably cannot give you the name or a list of names of anybody I represented probably in the first 15 years of my career, other than just a few key people that have stuck out. You know, they had basically faded away. And it's because I didn't maintain that relationship. I pissed away, a decade and a half worth of relationship building right there because I just wasn't in that mindset. I wasn't thinking about it. Now I'm talking about specifically our client database. I've always had a pretty good ongoing relationship with my attorney referrals, and I've known all of them for many years. But on the client side, I bet you my database probably doesn't go back to maybe about 2000 as far as it goes back. So I missed that first part and cost me untold amounts of potential referrals over the years. So you want to maintain the relationship because your former clients, I always say there's no former clients, they're always clients. Once client, always client. That's what I tell them. That's what I now tell people. They're just gold. They're gold.
Yeah. And so I think that, the industry, we've talked a lot about this as well, probably in the unreasonable hospitality episode. But, everybody does the birthday cards, everybody does the post settlement.
Oh, not everybody does the birthday cards. Not everybody does that.
Well, how about this? If you're not, so what this question is, how do you maintain that relationship, this part of the flywheel? You don't really have any need to talk to them about their case. What are you going to do to keep them, to make sure that they stay, quote, unquote, your fans or your fanatics, if you will, I think. So there's the birthday cards, everybody. That's an easy one. I think that if we're going to do a 101, like Diana usually does, it's the 101 is doing a birthday card, and that was very easy. The post-settlement gift box is also a layup for most PIs, or even the post or the signing documents with estate planning. I've seen some very nice gift boxes with estate planners when they come in to get their docs and everything, with the Yetis and everything. And of course, you do the newsletters, Mark, so you're staying top of mind weekly for a client database via e-newsletter, and then you do a print newsletter.
Print newsletter 4 times a year. Plus, we do a magnet calendar at the end of the year. The magnet calendar is the one that is the quote unquote, it's the stickiest because it's sticky. Yeah.
And you trap all this stuff. And so those are the things that I think are, I guess, not layups if you're looking for easy wins. And I say easy because it is hard to find content for the client newsletters sometimes. But as long as you can make that someone's specific job, it is much more easy to tie them to other things. I think one thing that I've heard through an added cousin, I believe, is the 1 year, like sending a card 1 year after the settlement and just kind of checking in there, just so you can stay unique and, top of mind for them.
Yes. The estate planning lawyers have this down because they have recurring revenue with their clients. They do it better than anybody I've ever seen, and they have 1 year checkups for all their clients. And a lot of times they'll do it, via phone or via Zoom nowadays to make it a little easier for the clients. But they'll just do annual checkups. How are things going? Did anything change? Do I need to make any additions? Especially when they're doing, a lot of this trust work, which, well, I can't say that I'm a real expert in, but they like, your trusts need to be updated quite frequently. So, and they just make it a recurring revenue. But they say, ultimately until the will has to be executed. That's the ultimate retirement plan for a probate law.
Yep.
So, but the result is long-term relationships, equal more referrals, equals a stronger brand, equals better clients. So those are the 6. Did I say 5 questions originally and then change it to 6?
You did.
Did I get the number wrong?
You did.
You can't trust me to count.
No, sir, we can't. But you do have 6.
I had 6.
You had 6 questions, which most flywheels have 5 or 6.
Most files, yeah. So kind of a full review, of the flywheel. You have the vision, then you have right client selection, then you have thought leadership and visibility, which, as we said, AI can help you accelerate that. Then you have develop trust, which leads to better intake conversion, which leads to better cases, which leads to exceptional client delivery, which can then lead to better outcomes and reviews, which leads to long-term relationships, which leads to referrals and reputation, a stronger brand, and then better clients. And then you just go right back up to the vision and the client selection all over again. And it's a continuous loop that just builds momentum and builds momentum and builds momentum. I will say that my momentum really gathered steam, and I can identify the year. It happened in 2017. 2017 was the year that our flywheel really kicked off and just started spinning on its own. Just gained its own momentum and just kept gaining and gaining and gaining and gaining. And there wasn't anything unique that happened that year. It was just 2 decades of pushing. We just kept pushing and pushing for 2 straight decades. And finally, it just started spinning to the point where, like, I almost didn't have to think about it anymore. It just kept working, and it kept working better and better and better. And I can't give you any specific reason that why that year was special. It was accumulation of 2 decades worth of work, and it just started happening. So I've always talked to young lawyers about that. It's going to take a long time. It took me longer than it should. It shouldn't have taken me 2 decades, but it did. But I keep telling people, hang in there. I'm coaching some people right now that are struggling. I just keep telling them, hang in there. It's going to start spinning for you. It's going to happen. You're doing all the right things. It's just going to take some time, but the momentum is going to start kicking in. And I think I truly, truly believe that. All right. With that, we're going to come back after the break and give you our 5 tips on how to accelerate the speed of your flywheel.
This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
And we're back. All right. So we're back with our 5 action steps going forward and how to get your flywheel moving. So number 1 on my list here is map out your actual flywheel. I don't care if you do it on a piece of paper or you chalkboard, or as I like to say, a whiteboard. I love to whiteboard the shit out of everything. But get your whiteboard out and start drawing out your flywheel. If we do this well, this is the result we get. And from this result, if we do that well, then this is what we get. And just take the process all the way around. Make your momentum visible. Make it visible where everybody can see it and you can explain it to everybody. And usually there's, like I said, the overarching flywheel usually only has 5, 6, maybe 7 steps in it. And you can use the question format that we used earlier. But there are other ways to develop a flywheel. I've seen flywheels for Nike's flywheel. I think Collins gave several industry examples of flywheels that have been published. I thought they were mostly for companies that did products as opposed to services like we do. So I like my 5 or 6, depending on how we count it in questions, as an outline of a flywheel, but visualize it out. Put it on a piece of paper and show everybody.
And after you do that, my second takeaway would be to audit every section of that flywheel. And I mean, we're all services, so at the end of the day, all of our flywheels should look more or less the same, right? Just because we're a services business, you might have unique ones if you're, or a different one if you're manufacturing or any other type of business. But at the end of the day, I think we're all going to have a very similar flywheel.
I would say it depends on your economic model. A contingency fee flywheel is going to look one way. An hourly flywheel may look a different way, as opposed to a flat fee may look slightly different. Not drastically different, but
What
slightly.
question would you change, Mark?
I how you choose your clients would
But also a question.
it is the
It's a
question.
question, right? So because I think that that's, but you need to audit. So I would, when I say that, so I still think it's going to be the same. It's all question. You're probably right. It's
Obviously,
some question. Oh, see, I just needed to hear that because I knew the answer before he did. He just wants to be contrarian because he's not mad at me too. So the point of this though, but when you audit every step of the flywheel, what we speak a lot about on the what I talk a lot about on this podcast is the handoffs. So it's not necessarily that you got the wrong component because you are at the end of the day still a services business. You're probably talking like what's breaking in either marketing or intake or client relations. It's probably going to be your friction is going to be in the handoff, either between intake and ops or ops to settlement and those, and just look there for your handoffs. And that's probably where you're going to find your friction when you do your audit.
Number 3 on our list, I said identify one place where AI can accelerate your momentum. And for me, there's 2 places really. Well, maybe 3. Number 1, in your marketing content. You can really crank out a lot of good, high quality marketing content with AI assistance. Now, I'm not saying let AI write your stuff. That becomes just awful. But have them help you. I have them, I love to use AI to outline things. It's a great outlining tool. And then you can use your dictation to dictate in the bits and pieces on each part of the outline, and then AI will put it together for you, a nice little package, and you just go do your edits, and it's brilliant. It really, you can crank out some good marketing content quickly. Can also be used. We're now using AI to assist our intake processes. We're using a lead rescue software package. What's it called again?
Oh, Speed AI.
Speed AI. We're using Speed AI. Pimping out Speed AI here. It's a system that helps our intake manager understand what's going on with their own intake department, basically. Can use it for client communications. Obviously, you can use it for case management. We just got back from Pilma, and who are the big 3 out there? Even Up, Supio. All of these people are selling you AI services that can actually enhance and speed up your delivery of client services, basically, which clients love it. Clients love fast. Fast is important to them, so it should be important to you too. So these are all places that you could investigate AI to help you improve your flywheel.
And then my fourth takeaway would be to know your timeline ahead of each of your strategies. So for example, with marketing, know that you're going to pursue that particular strategy for 6 to 12 months. Mark's gave his example of the TV. This has been going on a little bit longer than I'm comfortable with, but it's okay because, Mark's cognizant of his ROI at every single month on his TV spend. So, Collins talks about in his Good to Great book, the doom loop, caused by when CEOs love to find shiny object syndrome. So we're talking about whenever companies will go from one big initiative to the next without really completing one or following one through. And so again, the words that we kept using during today's podcast is consistent to get to that compounding. And you can't ever get to your flywheel or see the success from a flywheel if you're being inconsistent and you're just pursuing different strategies because you have shiny object syndrome. So know how long you're going to commit to a strategy when you begin that strategy. And marketing is usually the easiest way to do that because you can commit to, a TV contract for 6 months, 12 months.
So number 5 on our list is build a long-term client relationship plan. This is where the flywheel falls apart most commonly. This is where it fell apart on me. is you don't maintain that relationship with the client after the representation has ended. And you need to map this out. This shouldn't be random. This shouldn't be just haphazard. You should have a written plan on how you're going to communicate 30 days after the case, 60 days after the case, 1 year after the case, year after year after year after the case is closed. How are you going to stay in front of that client? How are you going to maintain and continue that relationship with the client and continue to build that trust with the client? How are you going to do that? This needs to be mapped out. This needs to be thought through. It's not just something that you just randomly think about, which is what I did for 15 years. Like I said, decade and a half, just pissed away. But, live and learn. Anyway, any final closing thoughts on the Flywheel? I know you are a massively big Jim Collins fan.
I am. I do love the idea of the flywheel because I felt like I don't know what it would be like in 2017, but I do feel like last year was our flywheel, and to the point that our flywheel started to feel like a hamster wheel. And there's this GIF where there's the hamster and you just go skip.
Why is going too fast?
Spun the other hamster spinned out. That was me toward last year. I like it was too much. So I don't know what 2017 was like. Obviously, wasn't around for that, but last year for me was definitely the flywheel.
Okay. All right. With that, we got to get out of here. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, make sure you rate and review it and share it with your fellow overworked lawyers. Hit that send button, hit that forward button at the top. And for more episodes and resources, visit us at successfulbarrister.com. Or make sure to hit me up at my email address, marc@marcwhitehead.com. Marc is spelled with a C. Or if you prefer Diana,
Diana at marcwhitehead.com. Diana spelled with one N.
I still can't imagine anybody spelling it with two N's, but whatever. So don't forget to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm at www.disabilitydenials.com. So till next time, private practice, not a prison. Bye.
Bye.